Hi there, I'm Zara Premji, and thank you so much for joining us here in Vancouver. And we're joined by Karim Versi. Now, I know it's kind of awkward. We're sitting a little bit far apart, but hey, there's a pandemic happening across the world, and we're not in a place where we can actually hug and shake hands, so we're gonna have to stay this far apart, unless you want to pop a mask on.
No, I'm good.
We have quite an exciting interview ahead for you, and I'm really happy to be here taking part in it because I get to learn quite a bit about the gaming industry, something that I took part in when I was a kid, but I can't say I know a heck of a lot about. So I'm really excited to introduce Karim Versi. He's an incredible individual with a very long resume and a lot that he's experienced. You know, he's part of the gaming industry and he's quite a veteran in it. He's been in it for 15 years. After graduating from the University of Waterloo, he jumped straight into it. So, you know, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, and he has experienced so much in this industry so far. And right now he's serving as the technical director for EA Sports FIFA, at least for the past 3 years. Karim, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So Karim, you have been experiencing so much. You have to tell me, in the last 15 years, what would you say is your favorite role?
So I definitely love what I'm doing right now as the technical director on FIFA. I think having the ability to make an impact on the largest video game franchise, or one of the largest video game franchises in the world, is definitely something that I cherish. But I think that from the perspective of what is my favorite role, I'd have to go back to probably my first few years in the industry and just getting the exposure to what gaming is, having the ability to work in that type of a creative environment. I started on NHL, and I was able to implement a shooting and deking mechanic. And going through that journey and then seeing the result of that when the player actually gets to experience it, that's probably what hooked me onto the gaming industry and kept me in it for 15 years. So I'd say that was probably my favorite role.
You know, I've been on the receiving end of all of your hard work. I get to play the games, but talk to us a bit about a typical day in your work life.
Yeah, so I think it's changed definitely over the course of my career. Initially, when I started, I was an engineer, and so I was doing coding for a majority of my day. But as I progressed through my career and in my current role as technical director, it's a split between kind of tactical and strategic execution. So day to day, from a tactical perspective, I'm responsible for managing the engineering team and ensuring that we deliver the FIFA 21 product this year and FIFA 22 next year, and making sure that all of our implementation from a technical perspective is actually proceeding as we want it to. So that's the tactical side. I think on the strategic side, that's where I get the opportunity to look at what are the trends in the industry, where do we need to go into the future, partner with the creatives on the product to ensure that from the technology standpoint, we're able to deliver the technology that they need to be able to deliver the experiences they want to deliver to our players.
Now, I'm going to go back later on to the 2021, but I want to backtrack all the way to when I used to play games in the early 90s.
Sure.
How has this gaming landscape changed quite a bit from when we had Sega and Nintendo and, you know, I used to play Sonic Hedgehog and all those games. How has that landscape completely changed?
So I think there's two pieces to that for me. So first, I think that the gaming industry overall has changed from being a niche market more into mainstream. So there's a lot more players of games now than there ever has been. And I think that that will continue as we start to get additional technology and additional hardware. Mobile, as an example, is something that has started to grow, and there's other avenues that I think will continue to allow the gaming industry to grow into the future. So that's kind of the first side of it. I think the second side is in the actual games themselves. So the fidelity of the games themselves has increased 100-fold, if not more. And I think that you can see that if you look at some of the earlier games, the amount of immersion that you were able to accomplish via them versus what technology now allows you to do from a rendering gameplay perspective, I think that the quality of the games now is significantly higher than it was obviously 20 or 30 years ago.
Now, I know over the years a lot has changed, but I don't think it's changed that the parents are saying, hey, get off the video game, stop playing. When it comes to the skills that you can learn from this hand-eye coordination, what sort of skills would you say can come from playing these games?
Yeah, so I think that, as you pointed out, hand-eye coordination and just kind of dexterity is probably one of the most obvious ones. I think that in addition to that, depending on the type of games that you play, you can get access to a variety of other skills. So I think that strategy, if you're playing a real-time strategy game, that's something that you could be exposed to. I think that games also allow you to have social connectivity, and there are certain games that are kind of world-building games that allow you to explore creatively and actually push from an artistry perspective where you want to go. So I think that there's a variety of games that you can play, and each of those games could teach you something unique.
Yeah, talk to me a bit about that. How can gaming go beyond just we're sitting on the couch eating some chips and playing? How can we explain to the parents of families out there who want to understand a bit more about this gaming world?
Yeah, so I think that most parents are probably familiar with the way that we connect socially right now through messaging apps, through video chat. I think you can view gaming as a potential extension on top of that. So yes, you'll be interacting with others and you'll have the opportunity to be able to have conversations with other peers that are kind of in the same type of arena that you're in, enjoy the same types of things that you do. And on top of that, you're able to have this interactive experience through the game itself, which will kind of provide you with another avenue to enjoy that relationship.
Now, going off of that, how can gaming be incorporated into a healthy way of life?
Yeah, so I think that you've probably seen that there are some games that are specifically targeted towards health. And the goal there, so I think like Wii Fit is probably the one that most people are familiar with. And there is a subsection within the gaming industry that allows us to target health specifically. I think overall, when you're talking about gaming, I think it's important, as with any entertainment medium, that you find a balance, right? You need to understand how much time you're spending against it versus what you should be spending your time against in other venues. And so I think that it's important for us to find that balance and make sure that we're using gaming for the right reasons and for the right amount of time.
Now, you've been in this role for 3 years, but you've been in this industry for 15. Can you talk to us a bit about that changing landscape when it comes to, sometimes we sort of see it as it's an all guys field, but I think it's actually growing. It's for everyone. Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think that it's definitely grown, as I said, as the gaming industry moved from kind of a niche market towards more mainstream. The consequence of that is that developers are trying to hit a broader market, and so the types of games that you'll start to see are different. I was reading an article recently that Asia, which currently is approximately 50% of the gaming revenue worldwide yearly, the fastest growing segment in the Asian market is actually female gamers. And so I think that as developers start to realize that there are other segments of the population that aren't being serviced with the current properties that exist within the gaming market, you'll start to see them expand the types of games that are available and try to actually satisfy the motivations of a broader range of people.
So what are some of those initiatives then you are taking in your current role to expand to a wider audience like you're talking about?
Yeah, so I think that there's a variety of different venues that we can look at there. So I think that representation and diversity is one of the core things that we're looking to do within kind of EA Sports generally. And that's both on the hiring side, so ensuring that we have that diversity of perspectives represented, because we believe that with that diversity of perspectives, you'll actually generate a better creative product, right? It allows you to actually get a better blend of all of the different viewpoints, and that will allow you to deliver a better game at the end of the day. In addition to that, I think that the diversity and representation in the actual game itself is also something that's a focus from sports as well as within the industry. So on FIFA, we added the Women's World Cup as an example, just to make sure that we're being authentic to the sport itself and including everybody that has access to the sport. And then from the gaming industry generally, I think there's a similar push to make sure that we're representing all the various gender and races properly in the games themselves.
I must ask, when you're trying to incorporate genders, races, being diverse, what are some of the things that take place to be able to make sure you are doing that? Is it speaking to people in different communities about what they'd like to see in the games, or what takes place?
Yeah, so I think that on FIFA specifically, we had a mode called The Journey. And as part of that, for one of the years that we delivered it, we had a female protagonist as one of the main characters for that mode. And in order to ensure that we were representing females properly, we actually did research initially to make sure that we understood what should the representation be in the game. And we had a panel of designers as well as engineers from within the FIFA organization review everything that was being delivered to ensure that it made sense to them, that it resonated with them, that we were representing the female viewpoint properly. So I think it's a combination of ensuring that you're leveraging the people within your organization to make sure that you're representing their viewpoint properly, as well as making sure that you're looking externally within the industry to get research and data on how you should be incorporating it into your game.
All right, so I know I can't really make a career change at this point, a little difficult, but what would you say for those who are hoping to make a change or perhaps enter into your industry? Maybe you can even convince me. I don't think it's too late.
Sure. Um, so I think where I'll start with that is I think that the gaming industry has a wide variety of potential career opportunities. I think that when you think of gaming, most people probably gravitate to the engineering side of gaming. But I think that with how big the industry is now, there's actually a lot of other career paths that you can take in gaming. So on the engineering side, obviously, as gaming has grown, there's a lot more specialization. So machine learning and artificial intelligence is definitely something that is up and coming. So that's a potential path for you to take. And rendering techniques have also improved significantly. And so visuals are a big part of where gaming will likely go in the future as well. So from an engineering perspective, those are two good fields to start with. From a non-engineering perspective, I think art is actually a big part of what we do in gaming. And so becoming an artist, so whether you're a technical artist doing modeling and rigging, whether you're a 2D or 3D actual artist, and an animator as an example. So I think that art is another avenue that you could take to enter into the gaming industry. And then there's obviously design and project management, HR functions, finance, like all the normal things that you'd expect from any large business. So I think that there's a lot of different avenues for you to enter into gaming. I think that if you're interested in gaming, I would encourage you to educate yourself, right? So if you're a student, make sure that you're working through a university degree or a college degree to try and get the skills to be able to enter the workforce effectively. I think if you're older, there are other avenues for you to kind of enter into gaming, get exposure to the various aspects of gaming that you could participate in. I know if you're a student, there are game engines that provide kind of free access to their engine, so you could actually use them to start to try and make your own game. Obviously, there are mobile apps that you could develop, so I think there's a lot of different avenues that you could pursue if you're interested in gaming and want to get into gaming.
Where do you see this industry going at this point in 2020?
Yeah, so I think that there's actually a lot of change over the next few years that I foresee coming. So the first one is obviously that there is a new generation of hardware that's being delivered by both Microsoft and Sony. And I think that the power that that hardware has will allow for games to take the next kind of leap in terms of realism and authenticity. So I think that over the next 2 to 3 years, as developers start to get familiar with the hardware and start to maximize the potential that it has, you'll start to see an improvement in terms of the overall quality of games, and that should hopefully help the overall immersion that you get when you play the product. I think that the other area that will continue to grow is mobile. So mobile is actually the fastest growing sector right now. It's outpacing console and PC. And I think that that is primarily due to the growth in emerging markets like Asia. So I foresee that mobile will continue to kind of take that growth path and will become more prevalent as probably the anchor within the overall gaming business. And then I think looking further ahead even, I think that cloud gaming is probably the next major shift that I foresee in the gaming industry. I think that with the introduction of 5G in a couple years, I think that cloud gaming, the ubiquity that you can get from cloud gaming and the ability to kind of play a game anywhere, save your progress across any device that you're on, I think we'll start to see that shift how games are made and how people engage with games.
You know, when I hear what you're talking about, I just jump back to, okay, I'm a player. Like, I play the games. I'm sure many of you out there play the games. But are there other opportunities in the world of esports other than playing the games? I feel like you're a perfect example of, yes, there are.
Yeah, so I think that obviously if you're interested in esports, you can be there as a player. But I think that as esports grows, I think that there are other opportunities as well. So I think that one of the areas is obviously broadcasting, actually, and being able to be an announcer or an analyst for an esport league or an esport tournament, and obviously all of the careers associated with delivering a broadcast to a population. So that's definitely an avenue. And then I think on the business side, obviously, if you want to participate in creating a league or supporting a league, helping to form teams, understanding how and which tournaments to play in. So I think that there's a variety of different avenues as esports continues to grow that you could pursue if you wanted a career in esports specifically.
Yeah, and I mean, I know esports is not your exact career, but you know so much about it, and you're an example of how there's so much more you can do within this industry.
Yeah.
For anyone who's looking into stepping into the industry, whether it's esports or going sort of the method that you've gone, what would you say for them? How would you encourage them?
Yeah, so I think that as gaming has grown, there's a lot of opportunity within the gaming industry. I think engineering obviously is one of the main paths that you could take in terms of game development. But outside of engineering, there's also paths in art, so animation, 2D, 3D art. There's also paths in design, so game design, game production. And then there's obviously the functions like project management, finance, human resources that exist in any kind of broader industry. I think some other areas are potentially, you can also go the path of quality verification and help to actually test the games. Usually the connotation around quality verification is that it is menial work, but I would actually contest that. I think that as technology has improved, the types of techniques that you can use in testing now involve significant amounts of engineering. So artificial intelligence, computer vision, they're all becoming a bigger part of how we test games. And so there's definitely new avenues to pursue in that venue as well.
Now, I know we've talked a bit about this previously, but let's talk about gender again. I want to know if there is a place for women to get involved in esports. From your knowledge, what way can women get into this?
Yeah, so I think that as we discussed in the prior interview, I think that women are one of the fastest growing segments within the overall gaming population. I think that developers are starting to target a broader set of the population as well, with different types of experiences and different types of games. And from an esports perspective, I know that there are female-specific leagues as well as female-specific teams. And so I think that there is an avenue there for you to pursue if you want to get into esports. The other thing I'll mention is that I think that one of the major pushes within the overall industry as well is to ensure that we're being conscious of the toxicity that potentially exists within the gaming industry. And I know that anti-toxicity is something that EA specifically is definitely pushing, and I think the gaming industry overall is pushing to make sure that anyone that wants to be a participant in gaming feels like they can do that safely and that they can have an enjoyable experience while
You've talked a lot about how we can get women into the industry, women already in the industry. What is being done to create from the back end sort of a safer platform for women, diverse people, anyone to enter into this community?
Yeah, so I think I'll answer that from the technology perspective. I think that as the development team, we try to implement functionality to make sure that it's a safe space. So we have the ability to report abusive players from within the title, as an example. I know that from we call it the first party perspective, so Microsoft or Sony. There's mechanisms within their platforms, parental controls, similar types of reporting. They also potentially have ranking of users as well. So you can provide feedback within their platforms if a user is being abusive. So I think that the industry overall is trying to shift towards a place where there are more guardrails in place for gamers to play safely. And we're trying to make sure that from the game itself, there are also similar guardrails.
So, going off of that with esports and gaming, what is being done to attract more female players? You've talked about the fact that there are more female players and there's a space for them, but what's being done to really pull them in?
Yeah, so I think that the creation of kind of female-specific leagues for esports and female-specific teams, I think is one of the avenues to draw more female players in. I think the other thing is that esports itself is, I think, growing and moving away from just kind of the shooter RTS type of esport. So I think that as more games gain kind of traction, esports itself will also broaden and potentially may find the types of games that appeal to different sets of audiences. And that may also allow for additional female gamers to enter the space.
Is there anything else I've missed out on that you want to talk to people about that you feel like they may not know about the world that you live in?
Yeah, so I think that from my perspective, gaming is a very unique industry. I think that you get a blend of cutting edge technology. You're always at kind of the forefront of the types of innovations that exist within the technical landscape. But I think it also marries that with a creative outlet, right? And I think that there's a joy that you get from being able to create something like that and being able to deliver it to thousands, millions of players and see the enjoyment that they get out of it.
As a parent, I must ask you, are your kids going to be playing your games? Are they already playing your games?
Yeah, so I think balance is important. And so I think that for myself personally, we waited until my daughter was a bit older, and I'm kind of curating the types of games that I allow her to play. So she's 7 now, and we've started playing Nintendo games primarily. So Mario Kart, Mario Party, things that are more social, kind of interactive. You can play with your family and have fun. So I think that as she grows older, my expectation is that I will still curate the types of games that she plays, and she'll be able to kind of access more mature content, obviously, as she grows older.
Now, I don't know about all of you, but I basically grew up on the FIFA games. I was a big fan growing up. I have to ask you, though, what's your favorite game to play?
So I actually like puzzle games, funnily enough. So right now I play things like The Witness, Portal 2 a while back. That's kind of what I enjoy doing. I know earlier in my youth I used to play NHL quite a bit.
So now, before I let you go, I want to ask, where would you suggest people go if they want to learn a bit more about you, EA Sports, a bit of what you're doing?
So I think from EA Sports, obviously we have a website, so I think that's a great place to start. I think that there's a lot of content on Twitch, on YouTube for kind of how our games are made, how the games are played. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity and content for you to kind of explore there. For me personally, I have a LinkedIn profile, I'm on Facebook, so you're welcome to kind of reach out through those means.
Wonderful. Well, an absolute extreme pleasure to meet you. Very lucky to learn from a pro in the industry. Thank you so much for being here. And again, like he said, if you want to learn a bit more, make sure you look him up. Make sure you look up this industry. There's a lot to learn.